Marquette Devon Burton, the saint and the sinner, giving you lessons from a pimp. And today, folks, we are talking about how to make love to a woman's mind and deeply penetrate her psyche so that she becomes a devoted follower. And remember, we're not talking about how to get a woman. I have another video on that. Check the past videos and you'll find one that talks about how to open a conversation and get you a woman. This is not that. This is a video talking about how to build rapport, how to build a very deep bond so that the woman trusts you and believes in you and will basically submit to everything that you want and desire happily. So folks, first thing I want to point out is that women are creatures of trust, and trust is not built quickly. Trust may take time. So walk, don't run. That's the first thing. Be ready to be patient. First thing I want to speak on is the nature of the female versus the man. The female's nature is actually inconsistency. It is change. In fact, you find that her biology itself means that her emotions and behaviors will be fluctuating at some level on a schedule, but the point is that it's change oriented. When you meet a woman, as a man, your chief trait should be consistency, meaning that the person she meets you as today, you should be the same person 2 weeks from now, and then a year later, you should be that same man. That will help her with building trust in you. She has a sense that she knows who you are. And you should really be yourself. Men go wrong at the start of a relationship portraying themselves to be something they're not. So my advice to you off the rip is be who you really are. Be very transparent about that. Don't talk about yourself. Demonstrate yourself. The more you talk, you create obligations, promises, you make oaths, things that require you to live up to it. The less you say, the better you're off. Now, that's number one. You have to be consistent and you have to expect her to be inconsistent, which is why she needs you. That's just a note on the nature of the female versus the male. Here's a second lesson. When you're first starting with a woman, you want to build rapport, which is obviously going to take a level of engagement, a level of conversation, and as I said, consistency. But what you don't want to do is go too far, meaning that you're over engaging her. As we say, if the chick can't breathe, she's bound to leave. So you need to maintain enough contact early on that she knows you have some level of interest. She's still uncertain as to if you're truly interested, but you're not giving her the Pepe Le Pew treatment, wherein you're not letting her breathe, because when it feels claustrophobic, she's going to run, especially if she's a woman who has experienced a lot of trauma in her life, a woman with very low self-esteem. Because you start pouring too much love onto her, she will rebuke you because she's not used to feeling that love. She doesn't have self-worth. So when you're pouring the love onto her, psychologically, it doesn't make sense because she doesn't feel she's a worthwhile person. So if you're giving her this love, it makes her uncomfortable because she doesn't know what to do with it. She's not used to it. So remember, when you're building that rapport early on, put in enough to show you're interested, but don't put in too much to overcrowd the woman. Always give her that sense that, hey, I'm interested. We can be something. There's some opportunity here, but you don't want her to be certain, because once she thinks she has you, then you've lost. And that's another reason that you don't want to rush to get the draws. You want to be patient. In fact, you want her to be in her head thinking, does he even find me attractive? Because once she has found that you're a slave to the vagina, for that time up until you take it down, she's in control. And then after that, if you behave like a sex fiend, she maintains her control. So that's one of the magical things about the pimping. A pimp doesn't want the honey, he wants the money, right? And that's why the pimp always has tremendous control over the women, unlike the trick, because they know the reason they can control a trick The reason they can extort money from a trick is because a trick wants the woman's body. He wants the sex. He's in pursuit of that. And because she knows she has something that is sought after by him, she has leverage. She has control. But when you're a man who comes at her saying, look, I'm not interested in what your body has to offer. I'm interested in what your mind has to offer. And for me to know the true value in there, I need you to open up your mind to me. And until you do that, I cannot say I like you. I can't say I love you because I don't know you. What you'll find is when you encounter a lot of women, especially good-looking women, who are used to these foolish men pouring attention onto them, when you don't rush at them, when you don't show them a bunch of attention, when you don't make comments on their appearance, when you're not rushing to have sex, they start to get mind boggled and they start to get even more curious and interested in you, seeking your approval, seeking your attention. And that's when you tell them, love, I can't say I like you just because the way you look. You know how many fine women are out here? So I grew up in LA. This is nothing to me. I need a greater value. Is your only value your body? Tell me something. Who are you? And through that exploration, you get to learn who she is, her insecurities, her joys, her ambitions, her intentions, and all of that information, her giving you her secrets, her putting trust in you builds your bond, but it also puts you deeper in her mind. It'll put you deeper in her mind than any man has ever been, because most men don't take out the time to truly learn the woman, learn where she's been before she got to you, figure out what other men have done to her, the abuse she suffered before she got to you, figure out the things that have been traumatic, the things she doesn't like, and the things she loves, so that you can leverage those things as needed. Here's a really big one, folks, and this is a heartbreaker, but it's true. Every woman is not available to every man. It's just a simple fact. You have some women who, in their head, they have an image of the guy that they will marry. And that guy is a tall Latino man from Cuba who's 6'5" and plays Major League Baseball. She might sleep with you, she might give you her body, but she won't give you her heart. You have to figure out what her ideals are. And if her ideal doesn't match up with you, and if you find that you're not making quick enough progress in terms of that relationship, it's because her ideal of what she's pursuing and who you are, maybe just literally in the sense of your physical appearance, doesn't match up with the guy she wants to marry. You will never be able to penetrate that woman psychologically at the level you want, because she's not psychologically available to you. She's not emotionally accessible to you. There are some women who have an ideal on what they want, but when they meet you, they realize, nah, I didn't really want that. But there are others who are really set in this ideal thing. So they might have intercourse with you, but they're not going to open their heart to you. So you really need to figure out what her ideal is, and if you can fit into that, or if she's open to the other options out there, i.e. you. So that's a really important thing to know. As the homie says, everybody ain't feeling everybody. Sadly, we're in an era where women would part with their body quite easily, but parting with their heart and their mind is quite another thing. So just because you sleep with a woman doesn't mean that you've been able to Dr. Phil her. It doesn't mean that you've been able to get into her mind. Getting into her underwear in 2019 is quite easy. I'm not talking to you. I'm giving you highly practical pieces of strategy that you can employ today. It might sound like philosophy, but you need to understand it, internalize it, and execute it. So it might sound as though I'm speaking in allegory or metaphor. If you don't understand and you're on Patreon, ask me a question and I will elaborate. Your love to this woman should be a mirage in the desert, meaning that she is in the desert and she sees your love and it's a mirage, meaning it appears to be everything she wants, but it's illusory, meaning she never attains it. As soon as she sees it, she pursues it. And the more she goes toward it, the more it appears to be a mirage, the more she can tell that it's holographic in nature. When she gets closer, the more she finds that she can't touch it. And because she can never get a hold of it, she must keep pursuing it. That's what you want to, that's the mindset you need her in, meaning that you show her the love, but it's hot and cold. She sees the love. She runs toward it because it's warm. When she gets there, it's cold and there's nothing there. So she has to keep running toward it. You must keep her working. And it actually makes perfect sense for the female nature, which is drama. They need variety. The female is never truly satisfied. Fellas, you've experienced this. No matter what, you can't please them. I read a Robert Mugabe quote. He said, "How could I please a woman? Not even God can please or impress a woman. He gives her eyebrows. She shaves them off and draws on her own. He gives her nails. She puts fake ones on top of it. He gives her breasts. She puts in her own version." The nature of the female is not to be satisfied. They need variety. They need excitement. They need drama. And you are the conductor. You are the master of this play. You're the puppeteer creating this drama. And a part of the drama of love is, for her, it's the constant pursuit and the constant attempt to hold on to it. And you have to be the person who keeps giving her new images and fresh versions of that love for her to chase. You have to remember that you're in the game and keep your poker face on. If you're talking with a young lady and she's sharing a sad story, of course you should be empathetic and listen. But that doesn't mean she shares a sad story, then you need to share a sad story. People like you better in general when you're the listener, not the speaker. So keep your poker face on. And even if she tells you, "Oh, my dad died in a car accident," and your dad died in a car accident, that doesn't mean that you need to say, "Oh, my dad died in a car accident too." In fact, it'll actually make you a lot more interesting if you don't say anything and then later on you reveal that your dad also died in a car accident. That's a lot more interesting, a lot more drama. Then she's going to say, "Oh, you knew my dad died. Why didn't you tell me your dad died in a car accident?" And then there's a piece of conversation. Poker face. Along with the poker face, you're also keeping your cards close to your chest, meaning you don't want other people looking at your cards, seeing what's inside. In your relationship with this woman, keep your poker face on, keep your cards close to your chest. You're picking her brain. She's not picking your brain. So in as much as possible, you're getting information from her. Now, so it doesn't sound like an interview or an interrogation, you have to structure your language appropriately and always leverage humor and lightheartedness when possible. So number one, when you're chatting with her, before you ask a question, it's always important to make a statement or give a little information about yourself. So you might say, "Oh, I'm from Pasadena, California. Nice place, tall palm trees, gorgeous people. No beach, but what can you do? Where are you from?" You see how I gave a little bit of information about myself? Not really, though, because it was meaningless. I was talking about the city of Pasadena, not the part I grew up in, not my experience. So you give a little bit of information and then you ask her. And then when she says, "Oh, I grew up in San Diego," then you can start using some language where you literally just repeat back the last portion of what she said in an uptone to get her to elaborate. She says, "Oh yeah, I'm from San Diego." You're like, "Oh, San Diego." Then she starts telling you more, right? And obviously you want to throw in a little bit of humor, you want to play with it, but you're pulling out more information from her. When possible, use the technique of repeating what she said, then using uptone to get her to elaborate. Try not to ask questions outright if you don't have to. And an important thing is, as I said, leverage humor, keep it light. Do not explain too much. It's like a joke. When you tell a joke, if someone doesn't get it, hey, they missed the bus. With a woman, you never want to elaborate too much. Why? Because the more you start talking, the more you sound like you're lying or making up stuff. It's just the way things are. So you keep your comments brief, hyper clear. Speak in a strong tone with good bass so that you're understood, and you always speak in down tone as much as possible. The only time you speak in up tone is when you're strategically trying to get her to give you more information. Remember, up tone is uncertainty. Up tone is for questions. Oh, you're from San Diego? It's a question. When you're talking, you say, I'm from Los Angeles. It's a statement. Now, gentlemen, when you're first meeting a woman and you're going to build rapport, I think there are two really interesting ways to do that. Me personally, I truly believe when you get someone in motion, you get them moving physically, that's when you learn the most about them. You see how they react to situations. Me personally, I enjoy salsa dancing. I would take a young lady out salsa dancing, see how she reacts to that environment, especially if she's never done it before. The way she responds to challenge, the way she responds to the fear of doing something new will tell you a lot about her. And importantly, with human beings, we spend a lot of our time reflecting and reminiscing on things that have happened. So when you meet someone new, you don't have a lot of shared history. When you go out and do an activity, then after that activity, you're like, oh, you remember when you were, dancing with Juan Pablo, the old man with the toupee? That was crazy. Then you can reflect on things. You have some commonality. So I like to start off the date like that, when you're physically moving, you're doing things, you get to observe her, you're still having fun, you don't have to have too much conversation, yet you're creating the premise for future conversation. Now, let's say you've gotten past that and now it's time to start digging into this woman's mind, trying to fish for that gold and those diamonds that are buried deep within her intellectual earth. Let me give you some questions that you can actually ask this woman. And I'll give them to you in 3 sets. Set 1, we're just, we're easing in. Set 2, we're a little bit deeper. We've gone on maybe 3 dates already. We're going into our 4th date. And then this last set is you're really getting deep with the woman. These are questions that dig deep, that you have to have some foundation of trust to even ask. Here they are. And gentlemen, when you're asking these questions, I want you to remember that eye contact is critical. In general, when you're dealing with a woman, really when you're dealing with anyone, eye contact's meaningful, but you should be deep gazing and being very intentional when you look into her eyes, especially when you're asking these questions, and more so when you're listening to the answer, because everyone likes people to be consumed by them. As Carnegie says, the best way to be interesting is to be interested. You're interested in what she has to say. She matters. Try to keep your eye on her, especially when she's talking. Me, I personally find it very challenging because I like to be hyper aware of my environment, but as much as possible, focus on her and make her feel like she is just shining so bright you can't turn away. Here is one of the questions. Would you like to be famous? In what way, if so? What you're asking her is a question that's going to let you know kind of some of her driving forces, give you a taste of her own narcissism. And when you say, would you like to be famous? If the answer is yes, that's going to tell you a lot about the type of woman she is. And then you add that second part of like, oh, you would like to be famous. Well, famous for what? That is a critical piece. She might say, oh, well, I know how to sing. So you didn't know that about her. She has a talent. Another question. What would constitute a perfect day for you? Now remember, depending on the nature of the woman, you want to reformulate these questions into the language that's going to make the most sense to her. If she works at CVS and she's an ABC type of woman, you don't want to say, quote, what kind of day would constitute a perfect day for you? She ain't even know what constitute means, right? You might bring it down a little bit and say, what's a good day for you? Like when you're really happy about your day, what happened in that day? So make sure you put this in the appropriate language. The reason you have language like this one, it lets you know for her what takes her into a state of peace. This is critical information for you because when she's going through fluctuations, you now have a toolkit of 3 or 4 things you can do to bring comfort to that woman or reference points you can make. If you were able to live to age 90 and retain either your mind or your body, that is the mind or body of a 20-year-old, for the last 60 years of your life, which would you want to keep? So you're essentially asking her a question that's forcing her to pick a side. Like, do you want to maintain your beauty and attractiveness for the last 60 years of your old age? Or do you want to maintain your brains and personality? And one, based on which path she chooses, that'll let you know a lot about her. And then you get to have her elaborate, right? So she says, oh, I want to maintain my body. Then you're like, oh, okay, so you want to be 90 years old looking like Kim Kardashian? Like you trying to still go to the club? And then it gives you a little something to play off of. But as you add in those follow-up questions, jokingly, you get to really have a sense of what's important to that woman. And if you find out that she's a dim-witted, shallow, materialistic woman, now you know you need to interact with her on a base level. Because a woman who's shallow, materialistic, and basic, she doesn't like deep conversation. So don't get into deep conversation, right? It teaches you, it gives you a playbook on how to play her. You cannot defeat the enemy without having intelligence on the enemy, which is information. And this one is a question, but I actually ask this question every time before I have a meal, which is, for what in your life do you feel most grateful for? What are you thankful for? So before I have a meal, no matter who I'm eating with, man or woman, business or personal, I always ask everyone, tell me one thing that you're thankful for. I just think that's a great practice of gratitude. In the context of talking to this woman and building rapport, you can ask her, what in your life are you most grateful for? This will really and truly give you a sense of the kind of person she is. And it'll give you a sense of what's important to her. And why do you need to know what's important to her? Because if she says something like, oh, it's my cat is the most important to me, then you know this bitch is a fucking idiot. Here's the second set of questions. This is when you're digging a little bit deeper. You've built a foundation of trust. If a crystal ball could tell you the truth about yourself, your life, the future, or anything else, what would you want to know? You see, now we're getting aspirational. We're not talking about what is current. We're not talking about her existent circumstances. We're talking about what she wants. Now, the pimping is very much so about the future. Because when you get a new woman, you're always talking about what you need to go get. Baby, have you seen the drop head Rolls Royce? I think I'd look good in one of those. We need to work hard so we can get there. It's aspirational. And the truth is, all human beings are fueled by their dreams. That's what drives your spirit. So when you ask her if you could look into a crystal ball and see the future, what would you want to see there? That is a question that's really going to let you know where she's going. And if she doesn't have an answer for what's in that crystal ball, help her put something there. You be the architect of what goes in that crystal ball, what can constitute her future. Because what you'll find is a lot of people are looking for good leadership, especially a good woman who has her stuff together. She says, hey, I got skills, I got capital, I got brains. Put me to work on a grand plan and let's achieve. Because at the end of the day, fellas, if you're going to the top, who doesn't want to go there with you? But find out what's in her crystal ball. If there's something there, think through what that means. If there's nothing there, put something in it. Is there something that you dreamed of doing for a long time? Why haven't you done it? Now this one gets a little bit deep because you're starting to bump up against her fears. She's not going to tell you, I haven't ever went to Greece because I fear that I can't afford it. I fear that if I spend my money on a trip to Greece, then I'll be down 2,000 or 3,000 and I'll be in the hole and won't be able to pay my bills. She's not going to put it in those terms. She's probably going to make excuses like most people. But when you get a sense of her fears, you begin to understand how you can come in as a strong man to offer support in those areas of lack, or Once she's told you, hey, this is a dream that I've had that I've not yet done, you can be the one to make it happen. You can put her on a plan to start progressing toward that. And hey, I can guarantee you, if you move her toward her dreams and fuck around and achieve them, or tell her, hey, if you said you wanted to go to Greece or fill in the blank and you're the one to get her there, I can assure you she will have trust in you. She will know that you're a man who delivers. But let me caution you, you don't want to be a trick. Let me caution you, you don't want to open up the piggy bank too soon, because when you're giving out gifts, when you're giving out things to people who have not earned them and they feel like they've received it undeservedly, they think, well, one, you must have a lot to give. Let me milk them. Or they must think, well, you just give out things indiscriminately. She needs to feel like she's earned it. You need to make her work for it. Here's a really good question. What do you value most in a friendship? Now, obviously, you don't want to get friend zoned, fellas, but you'll find that women errantly think that their husband or their boyfriend should be their best friend. But the truth is that you're not friends. You will need time apart. You will not be able to relate on a great many things because the nature of male and the nature of female are different. They're complementary. They're not the same. They bring to the table something different. But in understanding what she's looking for in a friend, you will understand some of the things she will look for in you. But of course, don't be her friend, because that's not what you're there for. But the question provides you almost an analog of what you need to understand to be a good lover. And so you're just asking it in different terms that make the question more palatable. And remember, fellas, anytime you're going through a tough conversation with her, especially when you're digging deep, that's when you start peppering in those compliments more. It's like a compliment or a bit of humor is like a little bit of sugar to make medicine go down more easily. How close and warm is your family? Do you feel your childhood was happier than other people's? This question is going to get you deep. This is going to go into parents, how she feels about her mother, how she feels about her father, her siblings, all very critical pieces of information. This is where you should listen attentively. You will learn the most here. This is a juicy question. If she doesn't elaborate now, don't push, but definitely come back to it because it's a gold mine. And let me really emphasize that, fellas. If you ask a woman a meaningful question and she dodges it, don't push. The pimping doesn't need to push. The pimping doesn't need to force. The pimping is always smooth, right? You're lighthearted. Let it go. Just bring it back up later in different words, in a different context. But remember, if she is very brief, like unusually brief, there's something there. She's hiding something. She's holding something back. Surely you want to come back to it, because you can't play the chick unless you know the chick. You must know her. Do not forget to do your diligence in this area. Okay, folks, I'm going to wrap this video up for now. There's still a third set of questions. Get started on those questions. Let me know how things are turning out for you. I'd love to hear about some of these wild stories you get and some of the information you get out of these chicks. Keep me posted, folks. Talk soon.